Hello, everybody. Welcome into GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, we have a lot of NFL news to talk about. The NFL, for 10 teams, officially opened up their minicamps today, including the Cowboys, including the Titans, including the Dolphins, and many other major players this year around the league. We will talk about a lot of major storylines in the NFL, as well as the story in MLB's infielder being a time ban from the MLB for gambling. And we will talk about the problem just in the MLB, but around the world. And also, right now, the Men's College World Series final is in strings. Blackford comes to an end close today. So stick around for before we get NFL rumor. You're part of the show. All you do is go to t.net. Make your donation with a message and mention on the screen for you, me, and everybody else world team. You do burning questions about sport, and all you let me go and leave that in the comment section as soon as I possibly can. Appreciate all you guys for sitting around and talking with people today afternoon. Like saying, and games officially begin today. For around a third of the league in the NFL, we're going to talk about all the issues around these teams, starting with Philly. Again, Christian McCaffrey, the best running back in the league, arguably in MVP last season, was an MVP candidate. He is the engine that makes them 40 years off. As much as you say, the entire is a machine. It doesn't go since he's gotten there in that trade in. This got traded for him from the Panthers just 2 years ago. The 49ers has been not an completely different animal before he got there. And that's not to say it was before he's taken them to the next level and he extended its extension worth $19 million. Excuse me. It's a $8 million and the extended run backs. And yes, this is absolutely deserved. It makes the 49ers wait a little more interesting. They're going to rock pretty soon. And look at the way the contract lining up them. Really one or two cracks it before teams are really expensive. They're encouraged right now where, you don't have to pay quarterback how much he's making. He is on the best possible deal you can have for a French quarterback. That being irrelevant side that's slotted in. He's in. And it's been huge for them. He's really flexible. Them pay guys like McCaffrey twice. But it also showed it seemingly showed okay with a guy like Ayuk walk, and that's up for interpretation whether or not that's a good or should hold on to someone like Ayuk who has been evaluated to them offensively. You did last season really exploding to see he was probably the best receiver. Debo Samuel, a lot of things that are animal receiver. He kind of stepped into a true receiver role, and they already contracted Joe Jennings, who I really like. Just my favorite is but more tier receivers. Juwan Jennings gets that contract extension before Brandon Ayuk, and it seemed like Brandon Ayuk was next. Now Christian McCaffrey gets turned out being extended, and they keep pushing this further and further down the line, and they haven't shown any interest in trading Brandon Ayuk, and that's fine. But we are seeing wide receivers start to get paid more and more this offseason. I mean, just this offseason, we've had the mark for wide receivers be reset 2 or 3 times. Amon-Ra did it with $32 million. Justin Jefferson just did it yesterday at $35 million. We'll talk about CeeDee Lamb in the next segment. He's trying to reset that market again. I don't know if Brandon Ayuk is worth that kind of money. Obviously, he's going to ask for that kind of money, but I don't think he's really worth that kind of money. It's an interesting situation. It really is. It's kind of a delicate situation, and it's part of the job of being a GM, being a professional, an NFL GM. You have to make these tough decisions with a guy who's kind of on the fringe. Now, while he's very important to the team, is he worth draining that much money into? And seemingly, the 49ers have decided that Brandon Ayuk is not that, and they can probably replace him. And I agree with that. CMC getting extended is something that they had to get done. They can't replace Christian McCaffrey, right? That's not a guy that you can just go and draft another Christian McCaffrey. There's not another Christian McCaffrey in the league right now. There's people that are close. Saquon Barkley's great, but he doesn't do it at the same level that Christian McCaffrey does, and he's had, and well, they both have trouble staying on the field. McCaffrey's been healthier more recently, I would say. Overall, this is a great extension. This is something that they had to get done to keep their championship, keep their foot on the pedal. They needed to get this done because Christian McCaffrey is the focal point of that offense. And if people might say it's Brock Purdy, but it's Christian McCaffrey. Brock Purdy is a fine quarterback, but he doesn't get this done what he's been doing without Christian McCaffrey. So they needed to get that done. It resets the running back market again, and by a pretty wide margin. I think he's got about 4 million up on the next running back, but it is it's still not as much as Debo's making. It's still not as much as Brandon Ayuk would be asking for. So in a way, it is kind of economical to get this done right now. And I'm curious to see if the running back market has kind of had a little bit of a resurgence from the absolute deadpan zero that it was in the that it was just a couple seasons ago, just last off season. But there's been a little bit of a resurgence. It's not all the way back, but we've seen Saquon get a pretty big deal. Jonathan Taylor got a solid deal in the middle of the season last year, and now Christian McCaffrey gets another deal. So maybe running backs, at least the elite ones, are starting to get paid, and that's really all you can ask for. Josh Jacobs signs a fine deal to go to Green Bay. There's examples of it kind of healing a little bit, and that's really all you can ask for. You're not going to see a turnaround out of nowhere in a position like running backs that kind of got tossed aside, and they're still kind of fighting for their rights right now. But it's a very volatile situation there in the running back rooms, and it's good that Christian McCaffrey got extended. It's good for the 49ers, it's good for the running backs, it's good for the NFL, because I would love to see more Christian McCaffrey out there. But anyway, I teased a little bit of wide receiver talk, and we talked a lot about Brandon Ayuk in this segment, but I do want to talk a little bit more about wide receivers. We're going to do that coming up in the next segment, focusing more on CeeDee Lamb, who is not at mandatory minicamps that kicked off today for the Cowboys. What that means, obviously, this has a lot to do with the Justin Jefferson contract that got signed yesterday. If he can pressure the Cowboys to get a contract done this offseason. We'll break all of that down coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Feel like I'm losing my mind. Everybody in the world blind. Please, Lord, give me a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the face shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make it every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I blow up in the basement. Statement. The top is so vacant. I don't need shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Getting my way and to be put down. It ain't replaced all this my town. I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the music fits, I'm losing shit, a stupid bitch. You choose to live, but choose to dip. You choose to fight, or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished breaking down all the implications of Christian McCaffrey getting a new 2-year extension with the San Francisco 49ers. In this segment, we're going to continue some of the NFL talk with kind of a continuation of our discussion from yesterday with Justin Jefferson getting his contract extended, this time focusing more on CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb, most likely the next guy up. He is currently not at Cowboys minicamp, which opened up today. Obviously, stemming from contract discussions. He's looking to get a new deal, reset that market, beat Justin Jefferson. We'll see if the Cowboys will do that. We'll break a little bit of that situation down in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all, go ahead and drop that in the comments. We will get to it as soon as I possibly can. Appreciate all of you for sticking around and talking some sports with me on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. But let's get into it, because this is a really interesting conversation with CeeDee Lamb and really the entire wide receiver core in general. The headline here, CeeDee Lamb is not at camp. And is that really a big deal? Probably not. They'll figure something out, whether it be this offseason or next offseason. They'll figure it out. What this really does more is put a kind of looking glass, a magnifying glass on the wide receiver position and really the Cowboys in general, right? Because you have a lot of wide receivers getting extended, lots of discussions about wide receivers being extended. We have Jalen Waddle down in Miami got extended. Amon-Ra St. Brown up in Detroit got extended. Obviously, Justin Jefferson up in Minnesota got extended. And now there's discussions about who's next. And there were a lot of wide receivers that could be next. Brandon Ayuk, we just talked about him. I don't think he's going to command market resetting money. You know, Tyreek Hill is down there. He did say earlier that he was going to retire after this contract, but it looks like he might be looking for an extension now. We'll see what happens there. Maybe he's just redoing terms to get more money. Either way, they are still talking down in South Beach for more wide receiver money going to that position after already locking up Jalen Waddle this offseason. And CeeDee Lamb, who, topic of discussion here with the Cowboys, obviously is going to be a giant topic of discussion, as the Cowboys always are. The Cowboys find themselves in a very interesting spot, and it's not a spot that they really are happy to be in, right? You have a situation where you have three of your top players all looking to get a big contract extension. Dak Prescott is asking for around $60 million, looking to reset the quarterback market. Micah Parsons, deservingly so, is looking to reset that linebacker or defensive line option, or wherever he wants. He's going to reset some market on defense because he can play just about anywhere, and he deserves it. CeeDee Lamb, another guy that deserves it. You can make the argument that he's not better than Justin Jefferson, and I'd agree with you, but still, he's at that kind of level where he would get market resetting money. Kelsey asks, is it optional or mandatory to show up now? It's in the mandatory minicamp portion right now. That's what started today. But, you know, these veterans don't always show up, contract disputes, so it's not really mandatory. They'll get fined, but it's not the optional portion anymore. But we are into this discussion where CeeDee Lamb deserves this money, and the Cowboys have to decide where they want to put these assets, and obviously they're going to find a way to sign at least two of them, probably all three, honestly. But the bigger question is, if you give CeeDee Lamb this money, let's say hypothetically he gets $37 million a year contract, so 4 years, whatever that would be, 4 years, 37. Yeah, for Kelsey, yeah, for training camp. It's mandatory now. They're on the mandatory section. But let's say he resets that market. He goes up from 35 a year to 37 a year, which makes sense for what the kind of asking price is for a guy like CeeDee Lamb. You then have to turn around and give Micah Parsons a contract. You then have to turn around and give Dak Prescott a contract. It's not a position you want to be in as a Cowboys. And the Cowboys already are tight against the cap. There's a reason they were so quiet this offseason. There's a reason that they didn't get much done. They didn't really do anything this offseason. They let a bunch of talent go. They probably got worse overall. but it's because they are a very expensive team. They're up against that cap, and they have to figure out how to pay all these guys. So I think it's going to be tough to get a CeeDee Lamb contract in. If they do, it's going to be very backloaded. They can't put too much on it right now. But the issue with backloading is you're going to run into a situation like you're in now. Just 4 years let down the line, you're going to run into some issues with the cap again. So you have to be careful with that when you're giving out these contracts. So it's a little more complicated than, hey, do we want this guy? Because I don't see a world where CeeDee Lamb and the Cowboys are separate. Even though he's not at camp right now, I think they'll get this worked out before the end of training camp. Really, this whole wide receiver thing. Tyreek Hill is at camp right now. That was another question. Like I said a little bit in the intro, is he gonna get extended? Because he's asking for more money as well. I'm not sure if he really wants to get extended. Last I heard from him, he was retiring at the end of this contract, but I think he does want at least more money to finish out this contract. So we'll see what happens there as well. The Miami Dolphins are also in a similar situation where they have to pay a quarterback. They don't have a lot of money right now, and they'll get more money on the books when Xavier Howard's contract comes off the books in just a couple weeks or in a couple days from now. But it's still not really a comfortable position to be working with as these NFL teams. CeeDee Lamb will get that contract. I do believe that the Cowboys are going to give it to him, and he'll come back and play this season, and he'll be great because he's a great wide receiver. Ja'Marr Chase is going to be the next one after that. I think the Cowboys will get it done before the Bengals. If the Bengals are smart, they'll get it done first because it's just going to get the price tag's just going to continue to go up for these guys. And they still also have to deal with T. Higgins, who I don't think will reset the market, at least if he stays on the Bengals. But if he goes somewhere else, a team that's a little more desperate to get a number one receiver, they might dish out that market resetting money. Not that I really think he is worth that market resetting money, but he is a wide receiver one. He is that kind of talent somewhere. CeeDee Lamb, we'll see what happens. It's a evolving situation. But he's good. My best guess, if I had to put my money down, he's the first wide receiver and the first in that Cowboy group to get that extension. And I think it might happen in the next couple weeks. We'll have to see. I don't think Dak Prescott gets extended or signed until the season is over. And same thing with Micah Parsons. I think it's going to be just a little bit of time before he gets a deal done. But it is a very important offseason for the Cowboys. Eric, host here of a wrestling show here on GSMC Podcast Network, says Dallas Cowboys hardly have a running game. Dak Prescott needs a reliable receiver or an offense, or the offense will be awful. Yes, you're absolutely right. They didn't address the running back position. They're converting Deuce Vaughn to wide receiver, who is the backup running back right now. What's his name? They're converting their backup running back to a wide receiver right now, and they're also, they're not gonna have CeeDee Lamb, right? The Ezekiel Elliott as your number one running back, he's not bell cow anymore, and you don't have a backup. I'm sure they can find someone. The running back position has become less and less important as the years go on. But the Cowboys are in a little bit of trouble this season. Honestly, I think they got a lot worse this offseason. And that's why I think they'll get this extension done with CeeDee Lamb, because he is going to be the focal point of that offense this season if they want to be any good at all. And as much as Zeke is fine, he's not going to be able to carry that offense. Kelsey, I am a Giants fan, so don't love the Cowboys anyway, but this is what's best for them. They are going to get an extension done with CeeDee Lamb. We're going to do a little more wide receiver talk. There was a press conference with the Titans about Treylon Burks in being a gunner on special teams and not a wide receiver 3. And I thought that was really interesting, especially a young guy just dealt with injury. He was a first-round pick just a couple seasons ago. So we'll talk about what the Titans might be cooking over there with their wide receiver group. And that will be coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube. Absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC. Fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube, absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished talking about CeeDee Lamb and his situation with the Cowboys, how that might resolve, and really the wide receiver position as a whole. We also finished talking a little bit about Christian McCaffrey getting his extension with the San Francisco 49ers, 2 years more, tacking on an extra $9 million to the deal he already has per year. It is a big contract for the 49ers. In this segment, we're going to finish off our NFL coverage, talk a little bit about the Titans. We haven't done too much Titans coverage. It's not a super exciting, flashy market, but there was an interesting story coming out of the press conference from the first day of NFL mandatory minicamp involving former first round pick Treylon Burks and his role in the new offense. We'll talk about that in just a second, but before we do, remember, if you would like to be a even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, go ahead and leave it in the comments. I will answer it as soon as I possibly can. Appreciate all of you guys for tuning in and talking some sports with me on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon here. But like I was saying, we're going to finish off our NFL coverage here, talking a little bit about the Tennessee Titans. And the Titans are in an interesting situation this season, right? They're coming off a season where they down in the dumps. Bad season, but they do seemingly have life with Will Levis at quarterback. They go out and they get some wide receiver help. They got DeAndre Hopkins last season, and he was really good for them. Kind of an underrated year that he was having. Then they go out and they get Calvin Ridley this season. They give him a pretty big contract. He's coming off a disappointing season, and he's coming off 2 years straight of not playing. But he gets a big contract after playing 1 year in Jacksonville, and that leaves Treylon Burks as kind of the odd man out. Now, outside looking in, before this press conference, it was Treylon Burks should be wide receiver 3. He was drafted in the first round out of Arkansas in just 2 years ago, and he hasn't been healthy. He hasn't really been able to see the field, but when he's on the field, he seems like he's fine. He seems like a good receiver. Now, it's hard to tell because of how small of a sample size it has been for Treylon Burks, but it didn't feel like his job was in jeopardy. The next receiver they have on the depth chart, they obviously have DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley, but then it's Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, who has done a really good job for the Titans. He's been kind of underrated for them. Now, he's not like a sexy name that jumps off the paper, but if you're paying attention to Titans games, he's been a big part of their offense, not just last year, but really the last couple years. He's kind of been a really reliable piece for them, and it's him and Treylon Burks that are battling out for that wide receiver 3 spot. There is a press conference today with the new head coach, and he basically says, hey, we tried putting Treylon Burks out at gunner. If he isn't going to be an every down receiver, we need to see what he can do. Otherwise, he might not be on the active roster, which is kind of shocking to me. And again, We don't know too much about Treylon Burks because he has not played that much football. He has not played that much NFL football. Since coming into the league, he's played less than 10 games in 2 seasons. It's hard to judge someone off of that, right? But at the same time, you can understand you kind of want to see results. Now, bigger surprise with this is how quickly they're demoting him, because not only are they saying, "Hey, go be a gunner," which is fine. He's tall, he's fast, he'd be a good gunner. That's what he was saying in the clip. He has all the tools to be a good gunner on special teams. Go be great in punt coverage or kick coverage, especially with the new kickoff rules. There's a lot of new things coming to special teams, so that might be a part of it as well. But Burks is a guy that it sounded like he wasn't even sure was going to make the roster, which is just plain shocking to me. It's something that I just don't quite follow, to be honest. I think Treylon Burks was one of my favorite receivers coming into the draft, and again, we had in that 2021 draft. Now, obviously, he wasn't the top tier, top of the list guy, but he was one of those guys that I thought was going to be good value down at the bottom of the first round, and injuries obviously derail a lot of things. But having Treylon Burks out there, I feel like is worth it more than Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. And again, nothing against the guy, but he just doesn't do anything special, and I think Treylon Burks could be that special player. Do I think they're going to outright cut Treylon Burks? No. I don't think that the Titans are going to do that. But I do think it's interesting that this early into training camp, they're having these kind of conversations. And I'm not there, I'm not in the practices, and I'm not watching it. But it is a little concerning that this is the new coaching staff, new regimes, kind of first impressions of a guy like Treylon Burks. Hey, we could use him on specials. It's kind of a long way to fall from first round pick just 2-3 years ago now. But I do think he has a lot of value on this football field. He's coming to the end of his contract soon. He's still got a couple more seasons to prove that he's worth it. And this happened the last couple times with the Titans. Obviously, Corey Davis didn't quite work out. That was their first round pick. He won in the top 5. A.J. Brown did, but then they traded him. So the Titans' track record of first round receivers hasn't quite been to their standards. You know, it hasn't quite been to the top tier standards as you want it to be. But the Titans have work to do. They've improved that wide receiver room. They brought in Tony Pollard to replace Derrick Henry, which definitely is a downgrade, but, you know, they weren't going to bring Derrick Henry back. He's getting to the end of that running back lifespan, and I think he can bring life to a team in Baltimore that lost all of their running backs as well. But it's a very interesting. It's something that I'm going to keep tabs on for not just for the season, for fantasy, for the Titans in general, because I think Treylon Burks could be very good if he gets a chance somewhere. Again, top first round receiver. He went in the first round for a reason. He's got the size, he's got the speed to be an effective receiver. He just hasn't been able to stay on the field. But I think the Titans could be sneaky good this year. We talk about it. They're in a tough division, right? We talk about a division with C.J. Stroud and the Texans, with a new healthy Anthony Richardson, seemingly ready to go with the Colts, and of course the the Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence, who's looking for a new contract as well. All of those teams. And the Titans kind of are at the bottom of that pile. I think there's kind of tiers there. You have C.J. Stroud and what he called his 5 wide receiver ones in a press conference today. That Texans team is going to be scary, I think. But the Jaguars are very good. They kind of had a collapse at the end of last season, but they were hurt. Trevor Lawrence wasn't 100%. I think they'll be back firing soon. We just talked about the Titans. They've got much improvement, and we'll get a full year of Will Levis now, see if he really is the guy that they want to run with. And then the Colts are getting Anthony Richardson for take 2 at a rookie season. He only played like 5 games in his rookie season, but he was very exciting. That's a young, up-and-coming division. All 4 quarterbacks, as long as these quarterbacks, cement themselves as starters, all of them, it's going to be a competitive division for a long time. So even if the Titans aren't good this season, it's very important. It's a very important year for them. This is when they can decide whether or not they're going to be building toward the future or starting over again. So I'm very excited to see what the Titans do, what the entire division does this season. I think that's going to be one of my favorite divisions to watch. But we are going to move out of football talk for the rest of the day. In our next segment, we are going to cover a big story coming out of the world of baseball. Yet again, a scandal. A new player has been banned for life. First time since Pete Rose has happened in the sport of baseball. Obviously, in the NBA happened earlier this season with this. And there's more apparently. So we'll talk all the betting scandal news coming out of the world of the MLB coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows. Available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over a lot of NFL minicamp news, a lot of wide receiver news, including Christian McCaffrey getting a brand new 2-year extension to stay with the San Francisco 49ers, cementing his importance on that offense and with that team. We also went over the CeeDee Lamb situation with Justin Jefferson getting that extension yesterday, where stuff sits with him and the Cowboys in general. And we also talked a little bit about Treylon Burks and the Titans and really the whole AFC South, what that division looks like going forward. In this segment, we are done with the NFL for the day. We are going to talk a little bit about baseball. There was another professional player banned for life, this time in the MLB. We will talk about all of that in just a second, but before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all you would like me to talk about, go ahead and throw that in the comments. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of you guys for tuning in and talking some sports with me on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. But like I was saying, we have another big story coming out of the MLB. There's been a lot of big stories coming. This one, Tucupita Marcano, infielder for the San Diego Padres, gets a lifetime ban for gambling. And we've had a lot of discussions on gambling and professional players gambling, and it's a whole mess. It's really something that needs this kind of punishment in. This is the first time a active MLB player has been banned for life. Obviously, famously, Pete Rose, the all-time leader in hits for the MLB, was banned for life after it came out after he retired that he was gambling on games, and that is not okay. I am fully in support of this, and I think with the expansion of legal gambling, because what he did was he gambled legally. He gambled over $150,000 legally. He was on the injured list, so maybe you can say it's okay, but it's not. There's not really a way that you can be a professional athlete and sports gamble at the same time, right? It's really just the integrity of the game is so important. And I've gone on tirades before in the past if you watch these shows for a little bit. But it's the most important thing in sports, and sports aren't respectable if they don't have integrity, right? Sports are an entertainment product, right? But part of the magic of sports is it's live and you don't know what's going to happen. When gambling comes in and starts to become more prevalent and it starts to become like sponsors, you have official sponsors, you have the NBA putting lines on the NBA TV app while games are happening, you have the UFL, which just wrapped up its regular season, constantly talking betting. They have the spread and the over under on the scorebug. It's becoming more and more merged together, and it's fine right now. It's not something that I personally enjoy. I think it's kind of ruining sports a little bit, and it's not that I'm against gambling. I partake in sports gambling every once in a while. It's not something that I think should be illegal. It's just something that I think should be as far removed from sports leagues as is humanly possible. And obviously, with sports gambling, it can't be opposite ends of the spectrum, but it doesn't have to be together. You don't need to have teams sponsored by sportsbook. You don't need to have ESPN bets, and that's and stuff like that. And I think the amount of coverage in sports media today going on to sports gambling, how half the time it feels like it's just sports gambling coverage and not coverage of sports, is kind of a little concerning. Really, I am terrified of what the future of ESPN is with ESPN Bet, because they control a lot of the information we get. They're the worldwide leader in sports. That's their slogan. And now the worldwide leader in sports, the worldwide leader of giving out sports information, is in charge of a sports book. And nothing has happened yet. I don't expect anything to happen right now, but you can imagine just how poorly stuff can go. Cooked books, stuff like that. It's a whole slippery slope, and that's a whole nother conversation we'll get into another time. But for now, Tucupita Marcano gets a lifetime ban, and he's not one of those names. It's not Shohei Ohtani, where it's like, oh my god, this is crazy. This is just gonna be like, oh, yeah, you shouldn't gamble. And I'm curious to see what happens if, and I'm not saying that anyone is doing it, if any big players get caught up in a scandal like this, what happens? Because I think the right answer is what the MLB did and what the NBA did, banning these guys for life. This is not going to be it. Jet Passan already said that there's going to be more minor leaguers that have gotten caught gambling that are going to be banned for life. And yes, absolutely, that is the right call. It sucks, but you can't be risking the integrity of your game, of your sport, of your entire industry for one guy, no matter how good they are. So this is something that is very important, that they set the tone and say, hey, look, this is you can't be doing this. You can't be touching it until after you retire. It's just something, the line has to be drawn in the sand, and there really isn't any kind of leeway in this, because the only thing that these sports leagues have is integrity, and if you lose that, there's no point in watching anymore, because then it's all rigged. Uh, it's all rigged. As like Eric said, this is why sports leagues were so against teams moving to Las Vegas. Uh, you know, then also, like he says, sports betting on your phone is now legal, so it doesn't matter. They've already got an NFL team there. They're moving an MLB team there. They've got an NHL team, and they're talking about NBA teams. But we'll see what happens. But it is a very slippery slope, and it's something that leagues are. I'm glad that sports leagues are taking it seriously, because the first real thing that happened was Calvin Ridley. We talked a little bit about him in the last segment. He got a 1-year ban for gambling because he didn't gamble on his team and he was on the injured list, and that's kind of a big name. It was an indefinite. He reapplied. He got back in. The NFL's been the lightest on this. Every other league has banned them for life, but the NFL had, the biggest names. Calvin Ridley's a guy that's been able to come back, and he hasn't done it again, but you kind of see the favoritism there, right? It's an interesting dilemma. It's not a dilemma that I can sit here and say, oh, just ban everybody, right? And that'll fix it, because that's not going to fix it. It'll deter most people, but it won't stop everybody. And the real question is, if we have another situation like the potential one that was with Shohei Ohtani at the beginning of the season, with his translator betting on games, and there was talks that it was connected back to him. Ipe Mahazuri has officially pled guilty, and the MLB has closed that case, so that's nothing to worry about anymore. But you get into discussions like that, and it's just a dangerous road that you don't want to go down as a sports league. You really don't. So that's one of those hills that I'm willing to die on. I'm not. I think sports gambling and sports should be as far removed as possible for connected industries. And obviously, I know they're connected industries, so they can't be, opposite ends of the spectrum. But they do need to. They're getting a little too close for my comfort. I think they need to take a step back. And it's tough for sports leagues to turn down the millions and billions of dollars that these sports gambling companies are willing to offer them. So there's going to be one case coming up in the next couple years with a major player, and that is going to determine how the future of sports are. And I'm waiting for it to happen. I don't know what league it's going to be in, but it's going to happen soon. And I'm a little scared of what's going to happen at that point. But either way, this is the right move for the MLB. I'm glad that they're putting their foot down. I'm glad that the NBA is putting its foot down. And this is just something that they need to keep an eye on. The sports leagues and sports gambling sites have done a very good job of cracking down on stuff like this. So for now, it's nothing to worry about, but it is something to keep in the back of your brain. Hey, be careful. These industries are getting closer and closer together. But anyway, we are going to move off of that, close out our show today with a little bit of Women's College World Series. The Oklahoma Sooners just walked off the Florida Gators for a chance to win their third straight Women's College World Series. That is a dynasty over there. They've won 6 in the last 10 years. It has been an insane run. At one point, I believe they won like 60 games in a row. So they are rolling right now. So we'll talk about that coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished talking about the lifetime ban the MLB just handed out to Padres infielder Marcano for gambling on his own team in the MLB. Punishment that fits the crime, something that had to be done. You got to put your foot down. You have to make examples of people. The first lifetime ban the MLB has given out since famously Pete Rose got his, the all-time great who's not in the Hall of Fame because of this gambling issue. Pete Rose lifetime ban. Second player to be the third time, I believe, a player has been given a lifetime ban in the MLB, first since Pete Rose. But we are going to finish off our show today talking a little bit about the Women's College World Series. The Women's College World Series is always fun to watch, and the Oklahoma Sooners just finished up a walk-off extra inning win over the Florida Gators, moving on to the championship game. They are looking to win their third straight. They are in the middle of an incredible dynastic run, and we will talk a little more about that coming up in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net. Go ahead and leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up at the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. We appreciate everything you do. If you have a burning question about sports, go ahead and leave a tip or go ahead and leave a comment. I'll get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of you guys for sticking around and talking some sports with me on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to talk a little bit about the Oklahoma Sooners advancing to the Women's College World Series. This is their fourth straight World Series they've been to. This is they're looking to win their third straight. They just finished a huge win over the Florida Gators. Both of these teams had incredible seasons, and my favorite thing about the Women's College World Series is how much they rely on their pitchers. You talk about putting a teams on your back. Both of these pitchers, they only had one player pitch. Both of these teams, both of them were over 140 pitches. Sooners pitcher went 148 pitches, and the Gators pitcher went 154. That is incredible how much they are pitching on their arm, and it happens every World Series. You have one pitcher you kind of rely on. It just keeps going. They are the workhorse. They keep you in these games, and they pitch like 4 straight games in a row. It is insane to see the endurance that these women's softball pitchers have. Again, 150 pitches is insane. That is not a normal thing to do, and they're going to do that like 3 days in a row. They move on to the Women's College World Series. That is coming up in just a couple days. I believe actually tomorrow. They're going to be taking on Texas. Like I said, the Oklahoma Sooners are in the middle of a dynasty run. They've won 3 consecutive College World Series. They've won 6 since 2013. It's been a great run for them. At one point, they had won, I believe, 65 games in a row before they finally lost one. They are a powerhouse in the college baseball realm, and it's really fun to watch. It's an exciting game. You know, it's only 7 innings, so if you say baseball's too long, go ahead and watch some college. Go watch some college softball. Those are only 7 innings. It gives you that same taste. It's a lot of fun, high action, walk-off home runs in the bottom of the 8th inning from Oklahoma. They're just really good. And Texas is a great team as well. My money's still in Oklahoma to win this series. Like I said, when you have a team that's unstoppable like they have been, and this isn't the greatest Oklahoma team in this run. They're not the number 1 seed this year. That honor goes to, I believe, Texas. But this team is really good, and they have the culture behind them. Obviously, Oklahoma Texas is a huge rivalry matchup, and that's going to be fun to watch in this College World Series final. We'll see what happens. I just want to give a shout out to all my favorite part of watching these games is their pitchers, because they go and they pitch their arms off every single year. It's just such a fun tournament to watch, and more love should go to it. We're going to talk a little bit about the Men's College World Series in just a couple days when that field is fully set. Right now they're on super regionals, so they're down to the top 16. But the Women's College World Series is just about over, and we will do a bigger breakdown of these games once it goes final. But congratulations to the Oklahoma Sooners advancing to their fourth straight Women's College World Series, going for 4 straight wins, walk-off home run. It's fun. I mean, it just is a lot of fun here. They had to have a comeback victory over Florida. Florida, who had an incredible season in their own right. They won 54 games this year. Heading into the 6th inning, Oklahoma was down by 1. They hit a home run to tie it, and then a walk-off home run to win it. It's